Hello everyone, it is Reese here, and thank you for joining me again with another video, another reaction video. We're returning to the world of what culture, and for this article, 10 everyday objects that horror movies ruined for you. Um, I once sent this, so this caught my eye when I was reacting to a different piece. I recently read a book that I'm going to talk about, Marc Olivier's Household Horror, sort of an analysis of different sort of horror artifacts and well, everyday artifacts, I should say, and how they're sort of manipulated to become terrifying in horror films. And so this caught my eye, and I was I'm very, very intrigued to see what this piece cites. Um, so this is by Alistair Hodgson. I've linked the piece down below. Um, and yes, so I was sort of talking about Blue Peter from Hell, I like that. I mean, it's going to be intriguing to think, I'll skip past that. It's going to be intriguing to think about how some of these sort of tiny items, most of which I assume we're going to find in the house. I've not seen this read the piece yet. How they sort of manifest as horror. And this is a wonderful example, sort of the screw in Final Destination 5. So this is a sequence in which sort of a young athlete is on a balance board, a balance beam, sorry, and sort of doing gymnastics and whatnot. And the whole thing is set up that you're expecting as per the franchise for the violence to come elsewhere, really. Remember, Tim. The danger, sort of the a bar that sort of seems like it's going to snap at any moment, electrical wires and water, and you think there's going to be an electric shock there. I mean, ultimately, a screw sort of leads to um, a screw on an unrelated character almost. Um, is yeah, um, it lands on the beam, and sort of there is a different person who gets it. So we're sort of following this character, and you almost incidentally forget about the script because the tension is derived twice. Tension derived from, is she going to step on it, and then the ultimate horror when someone else does. It's one other thing, and sort of it's a little. I hope a good example of what this piece is going to give us, which is kind of these sort of everyday items that sort of, a kitchen knife or something like that. We can sort of picture the horror of that. Um, I'm hoping we have some sort of a selection of things. Again, I'll skip by that. So YouTube may not like some of these. Think about some of these. So the blender, and kind of thinking blender would come as well. I had unfriended in my head actually, but yes, again here, your next sort of vastly underrated slasher horror and a little potential deconstruction, um, in which a family is sort of under siege by masked intruders. Um, I'm going to skip. I don't know how to position it. Skip slightly. That you can see. Essentially, not to spoil anything about the film. It's well worth watching if you haven't seen. And again, transforming a blender into sort of an object of how it's used in this film sort of takes it away from perhaps the blending purpose as we'd imagine it, smoothies, food, whatnot, and but deploys it in a wonderfully, wonderfully cruel way. Um, let us skip ahead. The electric carving knife. Again, this is something that I think perhaps lacks the inventiveness of the screw in the thing, because it's sort of, you can imagine that being a weapon. Um, it's deployed in the Evil Dead film in 2013, in which one of the characters possessed essentially cuts off her arm. Um, yeah, it's yeah, I mean, it's a bladed weapon. I think you wouldn't need a horror movie to be able to picture the sort of the potential malicious intentions of that, I would say. Um, so let's skip ahead on to number seven, the washing machine. There you are. That's something that's a bit more invented, right? Um, yeah. So Ready or Not 2 is a really good fun film. Again, perhaps doesn't quite capture the magic of the original. It is somewhat of a different experience, in which Samara Weaving's character and her sister, played by Catherine Newton, are pursued by more families, and ultimately whoever wins another game will take control of the world. And one of the sequences, one of the family members confronts the girls, confronts the women in a sort of laundry area of a hotel or something, and falls foul of the washing machine. The idea of how a washing machine may be brutal, You can picture the horrible drowning scenario, and deployed elsewhere in the sort of an underrated episode of Midsummer Murders, Midsummer Life. I mean, there's a slasher show if you ever saw it. Um, under the sort of the banner of Englishness. But yes, someone who falls very foul of a washing machine and um does so in a way that kind of really pushes it. You can imagine a drowning, but sort of the way it goes, perhaps. So, Headphones Tormented. This is a film that you don't see talked about very often indeed. And a group of kids. So sort of this is the area of hoodie horror and chav horror and all that sort of stuff. In which, and this is an underrated film. I would recommend this if you haven't seen. An early starring Ralph Tuppence Middleton. In which the sort of popular kids drive a young student to take his own life, and then his spirit returns. And there's some good examples here. Pencils as well. Everything. Um, yes. You can probably picture the violence done with headphones. This is quite an inventive film. If you're after films in which everyday items are manipulated for malicious purposes, you could do worse than watch this one. And yes, the headphone sequence is a wonderfully cruel one. It aligns as well quite nicely with what is it called, Dread, and the Clive Barker story that became a film around this sort of time, I think, with Sean Evans, um, deployed for similar terrifying reasons. Box cutter. Again, a box cutter is something that I think again is sort of, I don't know, I'd consider this something ruined by horror film because there's sort of potential to use a box cutter and leave in a malicious way. Anyway, this is Green Room, so a cracking sort of almost siege film in which a gang who perform in a sort of neo-Nazi club are under siege when they witness a murder. They're trapped in the Green Room. The Green Room. Um, and yeah, I mean, you can picture this again. And box cutters crop up elsewhere in horror. So there's this, and there's a French film called Dans ton sommeil, in your sleep from I think 2010, 2009 or 2010. Um, Again, I think you could sort of be inventive enough to figure out how a box cutter might be a lethal weapon even without a horror film. The TV. So I was expecting the television to come. I was wondering if it's going to be a Poltergeist maybe, just because I'm doing a lot on Toby Hooper and sort of that's been in my head at the moment. Again, The Ring and the TV and sort of videotapes as well. Videotapes inherently being items of horror in that they are things in which can be called horror, and the sort of snuff subculture that was sort of suggested and sort of mobilized as a terrifying thing in the 80s, in particular 70s, 80s, the video nasties in Britain. Um, yes, these TVs in which so in The Ring, the evil Sudoku crawls out of the thing. I'm more familiar, I must be honest, with the English language remake and is it Samara? Um, but yeah, sort of an object in your living room could literally be transformed into a portal. Um, in a sense, TV is kind of a portal anyway, but that's a sort of splitting hairs thing. Go read Helen Wheatley's excellent book, Television Death. And more about that, it's excellent. Let us plow on the microwave, the last house on the left. Um, yeah, very liberal. I will not have a look at the description because it's deeply unpleasant. The remake of Wes Craven's horror film, which takes a massive amount of liberties with the damage a microwave can do. In truth, it's very much it's very much stretching the idea of the horror film. The horror film, The Science of Microwave, which one of the gang of criminals in the film has his head put in a microwave and it is blown up. I don't imagine you'd be too terrified of that, as because I can't imagine that as a scenario that crops up particularly in any circumstance, or it's stepping on a screw or something is doable. I somehow don't imagine that this is something that would crop up too much. For other terrifying microwave scenes, I think the slasher film Urban Legend would be a good shout as well. This is just me recommending other films now. The Handsaw again. again, there's something Saw here, 2004, James Wan, Lee Wan-el. Again, sort of, you don't need to be too inventive to imagine a handsaw being used for malicious purposes. So if you haven't seen this, two men wake up in a bathroom, are told that they must cut off their foot. They are chained to pipes, and they must cut off their feet to be able to survive. And up until how the film ends, I mean, I think it's probably sort of commonplace now that the ending is probably famous enough. That we know that sort of the the handsaw is put to use. Again, it's not such a it's not something that I think you could not see the horror of anyway. I think this is half stuff that is essentially just weapons, and half of it that is objects that you would have to rethink. And then the crucifix. I mean, is this an everyday object now, really? Um, so William Friedkin's iconic 19th century horror film, in which a young girl is possessed by a demon and is exorcised. Um, I'm paraphrasing there. And as part of the possession, the young girl Regan does some quite disturbing things with the crucifix. That's as far as I'm going to go. And again, sort of, I mean, the crucifix now is sort of an object of religious identity anyway, but it's deployed a lot in horror films. Crucifixes that burn, that flip upside down, that through weapons, and sort of the end of Carrie, in which one of the characters is quite literally sort of transformed into a giant crucifix. I would say again, you sort of didn't need horror films to make this scary. I think in most horror films they're carrying sort of the religious connotations anyway, and not necessarily in a horrific light, but they're sort of normally there to represent God, to repel evil, etc. And although it's defiled in this film, and to say that that would have ruined the crucifix, I'm not 100% sure I'm on board with that one. And what other things crop up? So I'm thinking some of the things that are cited. I'm going to talk Olivier's book again, and some of the things cited up say the typewriter in The Shining, which becomes an object of sort of communicating madness. Things like he talks about the sewing machine in Carrie, fashioning Carrie's prom dress. But it's interesting. It's an interesting idea, and sort of, there's a wonderful and I'm put in mind of the cutaway from Family Guy, in which with Stephen King, where he's sort of struggling for an early word book, just grabs a lamp off a desk and starts sort of going lamp monster in the face of the publisher. And sort of anything can be terrifying, anything can be scary, and it depends on how it is sold, how it is communicated. That is always the challenge. And it is a good horror creator who is able to make these things terrifying, who's able to bring the horror. And thank you for watching. This is a little bit of a different one. Some recommendations on literature and films, but hopefully this has been enjoyable and interesting to watch. And comment down below and let me know what are the household objects that you find sort of you look at differently after having seen them in horror films. I'd love to hear them. Genuinely, this is such a fascinating topic, and I'd love to hear more about them. Otherwise, make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell so you know when there's a new video, and comment with other articles you'd like me to react to or videos you'd like me to make. I want to make the stuff you guys want to see. Thank you so much for watching. I will look forward to seeing you all in the next one.